The U.S. is not going to defend and cannot defend Taiwan. Now,
and should not defend?
I don't know, should? That's not.
I mean, I'm asking you to lay out what you think a coherent.
I think we've reached the limits of our power, and power has limits. Like, that's another thing just to keep in mind. Power is not infinite. You can squander it. And we're in the process of doing that.
And what about Japan and South Korea?
Oh man, it's hard. I don't understand exactly how that's going to go at all from an American perspective. But like, in the end, big powers want to and get to control their regions. We have something called the Monroe Doctrine. This was another problem I had with Russia. The U.S. is not going to defend and cannot defend Taiwan. Now,
and should not defend?
I don't know, should? That's not.
I mean, I'm asking you to lay out what you think a coherent.
I think we've reached the limits of our power.
War with Iran now entering its fourth week and challenging President Donald Trump's ability to control the situation. From escalating attacks on oil facilities across the region to the thousands of American Marines and sailors who, sources say, are once again deploying to the Middle East, and an apparent disconnect with Israel playing out in public, President Trump now finds himself facing questions over whether he really has a handle on all of it. Not just from Democrats, but from prominent voices inside his MAGA movement.
We said on every single rally stage, no more foreign wars, no more regime change. It's time to put America first. And this is a complete betrayal of those campaign promises.
I am so tired of spending money elsewhere. I am tired of the industrial war complex getting all of our hard-earned tax dollars.
MAGA is dead. It is deader than dead, and Americans are furious. We do not recognize President Donald J. Trump anymore.
This is why 77 million people voted for him. It's probably not the only reason, but the no new wars, put America first, don't let us bleed out in the Middle East.
That last person that you saw there, Joe Kent. He is now the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center. This week, he became the first high-ranking member of the Trump administration to resign in protest of the war. It all, of course, begs the question, will more Republicans break with the president on Iran? My panel's here in the arena. Staff writer at The Atlantic, Tolu Oloronipa, CNN political commentator, former deputy communications director in the Biden White House, Kate Bedingfield, and former Republican congressman and Speaker pro tem, Patrick McHenry. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here. Congressman, the question I have heading into next week, this potential $200 billion ask from the White House to pay for this war. I mean, you saw how some of the people who used to be the president's most ardent MAGA supporters responded to that. I'm curious whether Republicans are going to want to do this on their own, because they're unlikely to get a lot of help from Democrats.
Well, they can't do it on their own. You have to get 60 votes in the Senate, and you're going to have a bipartisan vote in the House. The House majority is so narrow currently, you don't have enough Republican votes to do much of anything on a daily basis. So something of this magnitude will have to be bipartisan. The appropriations process for war supplementals going back 30, 40 years has always been a bipartisan process.
Yeah.
This is the war vote. This is the war vote is on the supplemental, on the replenishment of our weapons systems. This is really the question of whether or not there really is a MAGA split. We have some influencers here that have gotten in fights with President Trump. And over the last 10 years, anyone who's in the MAGA movement that gets in a fight with President Trump loses. Marjorie Taylor Greene, not in Congress anymore. Mm-hmm. And so these significant voices that say they espouse Trumpism or MAGA more than he does are traditionally losers in that effort to fight with him. And I think this is just going to be another example of that.
Well, and you can see it in the approval rating. I mean, Republicans, 84% of them say they approve of how President Trump has handled Iran. Just 11% say they disapprove. And sorry, Kate, jump in.
No. Well, I was just going to say, I think it's actually sort of interesting on the Democratic side, too, because, historically, you would expect there to be some bipartisan support. It is difficult to take a vote that can be framed as not being willing to supply troops with what they need when they are in battle. And so that historically, particularly for moderate Democrats, has been a place. You can look back, obviously, at the Iraq War. But I think given the broad unpopularity amongst the general population thus far around this effort in Iran, combined with the kind of continued echo chamber of these prominent MAGA voices expressing concern, whether that's having a real impact on MAGA voters, the data would suggest actually probably not yet, but it is contributing to an overall sense that this is unpopular. And I think for Democrats, I think moderate Democrats you might have in another scenario seen vote for this money are not going to.
How do you see the difference or potential difference between where the pressure that you have seen those Democrats face, especially moderate Democrats, over the years of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, with a war that Donald Trump started when Donald Trump is so toxic with the base?
So I think there's some of that. I think the fact that this is Trump's project does have an impact on some of these Democrats. But I think the bigger factors here are one, rising gas prices, which is front and center for voters, and I don't think any Democrat is eager to seem like they are part of contributing to that problem. But
understatement.
To say the least, that's real political insight here for you. You're welcome. You're welcome. But secondly, I think that Trump's inability thus far to make a coherent, cohesive argument as to why we are doing this also creates an environment where Democrats are going to be just less inclined to support it.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's his inability, but it's also his unwillingness to even try. He spoke at the State of the Union for nearly 2 hours and barely talked about Iran, and now it's the biggest news story in the world. And his unwillingness to justify this before the American people, before Congress, is part of the reason why he's having a split within his own party, and part of the reason why he's not likely to get the support that you would expect in a bipartisan way. At least at the beginning of wars, you normally get at least some bipartisanship at the very beginning. Everyone rallies around the flag, rallies around the troops. You're not seeing that as much this time around, in part because the president has not explained why we're doing this, why we're all sort of having to pay the price for this with higher gas prices, higher inflation, and a lack of understanding about where this goes next.
播报新闻是我的日常，必须时刻保持妆容和皮肤的最佳状态。当来到人生中最重要的时刻，也是 KS 逆时奇迹帮助我轻松驾驭，闪闪发光。KS 逆时奇迹活肤露全效精华、精华霜，多达5种 EGF 6大冻龄关键成分，保湿效果让我非常满意，小细纹也不再困扰我。我就是我自己的最佳女主角 ，KS 让我从容自信，光彩动人。我是我人生中的大女主，我的最爱我做主。KS 逆时奇迹系列热卖中，下单请上快点购，透过中天新闻网 App 下单立减50，或输入 CTI 推荐码有额外折扣。